Hi, friends, and welcome back. I'm so happy that you are here. We are entering the sixth week of our play along journal series here on YouTube. Um, I am loving working through these journals so far with you and taking you along for the ride. And I love seeing everything that you guys have been doing over on Instagram as well. Remember, make sure to tag me and to also use the hashtag BBHenryPlayAlong so that we can all follow along with your work. So, this spread is a good example of when I was going through the journal after it was finished and seeing that some pages were calling to me to have certain elements more than others. So this one, had this botanical that I had drawn already on hand that I had fussy cut out, and it just felt like it would fit really well on this spread. I like to have elements pre-cut out ahead of time that I can draw maybe a bunch at once and take the time to fussy cut those out, meaning that I cut closely around the edges on all the sides, and then I can store them all together, and that way when I am looking for an element like that, I can just pull from that stash instead of stopping what I'm doing in the moment and making them. So I applied some black gesso to the page, which is one of my favorite supplies because it dries so quick. And I knew that I wanted some paint splatters on this page. I love using my fine liner. It looks like it was a little bit clogged when I was using it. Usually it's more smooth than that. The downside to using the fine liner is it does take quite a while for that paint to dry. So I did go ahead and hit that with the heat gun and it came back on for you. But I do love using that because it is such a fun effect. I like to write with it as well. You can get really large, fun, abstract writing with it or mark making, or as you could just see that I did like paint splatters. If I had already had paint out, I could have used a paintbrush just as well. I am going to go ahead and glue that down. I like having something behind that botanical besides just the plain paper that was behind it. This helps it stand out from the background a little bit and it creates some intrigue behind it. I'm adjusting it here and seeing what placement I want. I tore off just a little bit of that stem on the bottom. I could have left it overhang just fine, but I knew as I went through the journal and worked in it more that it would probably get bent or torn off anyway, so I just went ahead and tore it off. I added a little bit more scribble marks as I'm going along. This helps to just grunge up the background and continue to loosen up my mind as I work. Otherwise, I can get a little bit too uptight and almost predictable with my work. So I'm just testing this pen here. As I thought, it is permanent once dry. You can see with that wet paintbrush, it did move the pigment a little bit, but it was not completely dry when I tried it. So I want to bring in some text to my page here. This is one of my favorite patterns, you could say. I like to think of text as a pattern. So I am just writing as I normally would. But I'm changing it up a little bit. I'm bringing my letters maybe closer together. I'm not doing spaces. I want this to, in the end, to look like an overall background pattern rather than something that you can just take and read. So I'm going to be adding stuff over top of this. So in the end, it will just look like it is part of the background. This is a great way if you don't like keeping a traditional journal, but you still feel like you want to maybe journal a little bit and get your feelings out. This is a great way to do this because you end up covering a lot of it up in the background and it makes your art even more personal to you. By doing this. So I'm taking out my white gesso and I'm going to be adding some of that then over the top. That way that text kind of goes in and out of the background. It kind of ebbs and flows a little bit more. I don't intend for this to be something that you read in the end. And if you don't want to use this as a time to journal, sometimes I don't want that. I kind of just start writing gibberish or random sentences. whatever works. But in order for it to look like actual text writing, you do want to be actually writing something instead of just squiggle marks. I found that it does end up looking better when you actually are writing real words and real sentences. This applies when you make your letters bigger and you're trying to fill like a whole bigger background. So as you can see, I did do gesso over a large part of that, but that's just because I do want it to kind of go in and out of the background a little bit, and I'm loving the way that that looks when I put that flap tab back over it for that right side of the page. I'm thinking I want to bring in some collage elements on the right side. The left side definitely is my focal element. It is the side that I want to be paying attention to the most, but I still think we need some sort of intrigue on both sides of the piece of paper. We don't want necessarily one side to be totally jazzed up and the other just to feel left out, but at the same time, we don't need them to compete with each other. Instead of competing, maybe we want them to complement each other more. I'm using some fabric as a way to collage as well. I love the way that those frayed edges then look as another design element. I'm playing around with the placement of this little scrap of paper that I have. Sometimes it comes to you right away where you want something, and other times you just have to keep messing around with it, putting it in different spots until something really calls out to you. As you can see, I did end up putting it under the fabric scrap that I had there, and that happens to me a lot. You end up putting something down, and later on you realize that you want things to kind of tuck under each other instead of everything that you're adding on just to be on top. That can end up being a bit predictable. If we can layer what we're doing and have it unexpected what goes on top and what goes underneath, that is great. I'm fraying the edges of this little piece of fabric a little bit. I want more texture to be added. Overall, in the end, this page stays pretty simple, but I really like all the negative space. I think for this particular spread, it ends up being beneficial and useful in the end. If you have questions about the supplies that I didn't use very many different supplies in this video, but I always try to tag those in the description below to give you links for where to go. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Make sure to leave a comment and let me know what you think. I'll be sending out a freebie in my newsletter soon, so make sure you are on that list. That sign up link is also in the description below. I'm wishing here that I had done a little bit of paint splatter on that black gesso that's on that flap there. So to kind of cheat that a little bit, I'm using my liquid corrections pen. I could have done this from the beginning. The fine liner, by dripping it like I did at the beginning, was more of a random approach this way, but this dries quicker like what I just did. So I hope that you guys love this, and I'll see you at the end of the week. Have a good one.